Mr. President, the British government this afternoon did ask the Council to adjourn and go into negotiations on the proposals which they put before this Council, and indeed the amendments which come from African group. I want to put this on record, sir, that the government of Zambia will not agree to the British proposals. I'm sorry to say this, that even if the Security Council passed this as a resolution, my government will not participate in the British proposals, because this, in short, means just one thing, that is to kill Zambia bit by bit. Now, he would be a foolish man, sir, who would accompany any man to go and buy his own coffin. And Zambia will not be prepared to accompany the British government to go and buy her own coffin. And therefore, I reject, sir, that we will not accept this. I would go even further than that, Mr. President, that even if you added oil as we have done, it's not a matter of adding oil on the paper. The South African government is not prepared to participate. The Mozambique government is not prepared to participate. Therefore, when you are talking about adding oil, unless you are talking of having some powers which you would have to implement, which is the force. Now, if it is a matter of putting something on the paper, which we know is going to be rejected, and then we go into it, and we find that Zambia is losing or collapsing, then there will be no point for us to support this, unless we are assured by the Security Council here that they are going to enforce this by some form of force. But if, as I have censored, that this is not the case, then of course there's no point even accepting, including oil, because it's not going to be implemented. Because Zambia, we'll have to go into this immediately. And when we go into immediately to find ourselves, as we have found ourselves, we told the British government that the voluntary sanction will fail. They never accepted this. We said this will fail. It has failed. But the British government, as the ambassador of Nigeria said this morning, that the British could not come out and say, yes, it has failed. They cannot just come out and say to the world that, yes, it has failed. But they have just moved for another smoke screen to give all this which they have given before us, that this is another move which will impress the world. Now, it may impress the world, sir, but it cannot impress Zambia, I'm afraid. Sir, it is not my intention to attack the British government. I'm only explaining. And I have left a lot of things which I could not say here due to my diplomatic restrictions, which we have exchanged letters, Britain and now my government, which would be quite shameful if I expose them here. But because of my my diplomatic restrictions, I cannot say so. So I would like the Council to understand that I am not the firebrand, as they call me in the press. I am a mad person, as they call me in the press. I'm not. It is only that no one of us, if his children were on fire, cannot just be dormant or be in a slow motion. He will have to hurry up and see that he saves his children. My people in Zambia, 4 million of my people, are on fire because of the negligence of the British government. And therefore, I cannot be, it's not being an extremism. It's just a situation created by the British government that has made me to say what I have said. Otherwise, I have no intention of quarreling with any government. We believe in peace, and we want to maintain peace. But because the situation is so bad...
Good day and welcome to today's broadcast. I apologize that we started late. My special guest today is traveled out of town, so she came out of our own station and we had glitches in the connections, but I'm glad we are here and she's already here with us. We are featuring Mulenga Kapwepwe, Mulenga Mpundu Kapwepwe. They are twins, and she'll tell us more about that. She's an author, and she's written a wonderful book that I love and reviewed. She's also a founder of the Zambia Women's History Museum. She has paid particular attention to the historical leadership of our women, because women are typecast like they're not leaders or like they're behind. She has an entire Zambia Women's History Museum, and we're glad to host her. But remember, why I played the first key is her father is one of the most prominent leaders in our country, founder of national independence in our country, Simon Mulenga Kapwepwe, who also delve into there. In the clip, is already, as he was at the United Nations and pleading the case of Zambia and Southern Africa, he was saying, you, the media, you call me that I'm radical, that I am confused, that I'm mad. I'm not. All I want are good things for our people. People have a habit when you express yourself strongly, they give you labels and names. Let me bring Mulenga Kapwepwe. I'm glad that we have connected. We couldn't connect earlier, but I wanted you on audio and video. I can see, yeah. Is the connection not okay? Yeah.
It's fine.
Mulenga Kapwepwe, welcome to today's program, and we are glad to host you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you very much for having me. It's very hectic where I am. As you said, I'm not in station and I'm not in my usual place, so everything is very last minute and trying to make it work. But thank you for having me.
But it looks like we are okay. Volume and picture is okay. We had better picture, but even this, I think, will do for the purpose of our broadcast. Colleagues and all Zambians that are watching us, share this broadcast, share it so that many people can see it as we learn history, especially about women leadership from Mulenga Kapwepwe. You've been in the news. The minister cast you in the news. And let me just play a bit of what the minister said, and then you answer. Or maybe we'll do it the other way. Let me start by just introduce yourself briefly.
All right. So my name is Mulenga. I am the sixth daughter of Simon Kapwepwe. And one of a set of twins, of course. That's why he was known as Shimpundu Mulenga Kapwepwe. Let me put it on record here that everything that I'm going to express and talk about here are my opinions, not the opinions of Simon Kapwepwe or indeed my family. Because I've noticed that although it's me who speaks, my entire family comes under attack. There were some very, very uncivil, posts that I saw attacking my father, who has been dead over 40 years, and cannot answer for himself. Besides the point which I am the one who's speaking. So please, I am the one who's speaking. This is Mulenga Kapwepwe. It's no other Kapwepwe except me. And the opinions I express here are my opinions. And the experiences I will tell you about are
Mulenga,
from my perspective.
I agree there. Many people don't understand that even in the families, we hold various opinions about the same events. We are
absolutely
getting you from your own lenses, how you view this country, how you view your father, from your own lenses.
Yes.
You will notice that you can attend the same event, and the reports that come out from there, sometimes you say, did we see the same things? Because others, probably a mind like yours, which is that of a writer, is detailed. Others will have a casual look at the matter, but you have an interpretive mind. So for me, give us yourself. And we are looking at the country, at your father, at the founding of this country, and the issues around women leadership through your lenses. If anyone else has another opinion, they are welcome to come to this program.
Totally. And, my family has diverse views and perceptions. So this is me.
Thank you. Continue with a brief background about yourself.
Okay, and just another point I wanted to make, Emmanuel, that there are suddenly hundreds of men from Eastern Province who suddenly want to marry me. I think from your advertisement. So I'm referring them all to you because you're the one who has started this this problem for me.
You are
So
my sister. I'll be glad, especially Abambuya one. I don't want them to come with
yes,
goats, and you know she looks
that's the
eternal.
price.
You don't even know what, you don't even want to know how old she is. So as my sister, you better bring proper cattle.
Exactly. Not those ones we see at Inchwala.
No.
Yes. So you were asking, yeah, that's basically my introduction. I think I've worked mostly in the cultural sector, but I have worked widely in many other sectors. You know, my first consultancy company that I set up, I think I worked in the banking sector in terms of being part of the team, for example, that restructured Zanaco. I was part of the team that restructured ZNTB, as it was called those days. I was involved in the, for example, public education campaigns and designing even the logo for the Sector Exchange Commission. Did a lot of communication work, especially when the HIV/AIDS pandemic started. So worked a lot with USAID contractors and so forth. I have worked and sat on international boards. I chaired the Atiro Network, which is a network of about 6,000 artists from Cape to Cairo. I was elected chair of that organization twice. And I've been given a lifetime award by the Atiro Network of Africa. So I've done work in many sectors. I have worked in government. I was always placed in government as a consultant. So, you know, being paid by, say, USAID contractors or by UNICEF or organizations like that, but working to help government, so inside government. So I was at sports, sports and youth and child development for about 4 years, helping the government to come up with a national child policy, which we accomplished. I was the cultural consultant to the European Union as well, the technical advisor, and so I was, in fact, instrumental in writing the proposal and getting the 2.1 million euros that we got for that project. But as the technical advisor for the European Union, and that meant basically literally coordinating the entire sector in terms of projects and development. And just to say that I think that project performed so well that Zambia was actually cited as a gold standard. I think for the first time, the project had accounted for its money, everything was in place, and we had accomplished all our goals. So I've worked in a lot of sectors. I've worked with many different types of patients. So I have worked with women in prisons, working to find out what it is we can do to help women who are behind bars, because for me, they're the most marginalized of all the population. They have very particular problems that I think we don't address. I've worked with men in prison. I was part of the team that did the HIV policy for the prison for the correctional services. So I've worked a lot in policy, but I've also worked a lot in what we call programming, which means creating solutions to social problems. So some of the solutions we created, for example, with my team, were, for example, the national response to the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and our model was actually adopted by some African countries because we created the district response and gathered the potential of every stakeholder in a district to come on board to address the HIV. That one was adopted by several countries in Africa because it was seen as a very good model to address the pandemic. So my skills and my experience is very wide ranging because I worked from women in the boardroom to women in the prison cells, you know. I've worked with commercial sex workers in Nakonde, in Chirundu, in Livingston. I'm interested very much in working with, I think, the lowest common denominator, if you want to put it like that. The people who I feel are really the ones who suffer when our economy is not working or when our laws are not working. I try to go in there and see whether we can find a solution for me. I believe that government should always look for solutions that address the most numbers of the population. So I've been very interested in doing those kind of projects, and I've done quite a few of them. But I can, I guess, operate at any level. I train teams. I train management teams. I have a lot of strategic helping organizations put together the strategic plans and so forth. So yeah, I've chaired boards, national and international. So I've had a very active and full life. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, just briefly talk about your twin sister, your Mpundu. Why I'm bringing this out is you were named as one of the most influential 100 women in Africa by BBC. The congratulations and pictures came to both you and Chileshe, the COMESA Secretary General. Just briefly talk about your twin, growing up with your twin, and even being mistaken one for the other.
Yeah, that always happens. The BBC award actually was for my work in the museology space because of the Women's History Museum. So that's because some of the innovations that we have created in the museology space through the Women's History Museum are quite they're quite ahead of most museums. We're ahead of our time, I would say. And even next week, I'm going to Dubai to speak at the International Council of Museums, because the innovation that we're doing with the Women's History Museum in terms of the technology, instead of the use of blockchain, in terms of preserving our artifacts and the economic benefits that we can attain from those, is very, very, very new, very advanced. And I think a lot of, on the global stage, people are very interested in what we're doing as Women's History Museum. So I was born a twin. Nobody knew I was there, actually. My mother didn't know she was carrying twins. So and the interesting thing about our birth, I guess, is that we were born on the day that my father and his comrades actually walked out of the ANC. That's when they walked out of Nkumbula's party at a meeting in Chilenje and went on to create what was then known as ZANC. So that was on the 7th of October, 1958. That was the day, actually, that the ANC and Nkumbula split. And there was then the ANC, and then my father and Kaunda and Sokoni and all those who were there at that time, they created ZANC, which we were born in October. By December, all of those who had created ZANC had been arrested and were in prison and so forth. So the first three, I guess, after 3 months of being with our father, he was imprisoned. So we were born on a very critical day in terms of the history of Zambia. I must also say that because they didn't know that my mother was carrying twins, there's a very big gap between the time my sister was born and the time I was born. My sister was born in the morning. I was born in the early evening because nobody knew I was there. I was there. And eventually when my mother went to the hospital, that's when they discovered I was there. And she had to be induced, and I was then born. Nobody really knew whether I was still alive or not because 8 hours had passed. But I came out, and here I am.
Wow, lucky baby. Lucky baby.
very, very, very lucky. Yeah, they really didn't think after 8 hours that I was still alive, but I was. And
your father,
and here I am.
he himself said in that address to the United Nations, and I think he was the first one after independence to speak on behalf of the Republic of Zambia. He was vice president and was the first one to speak. Is an iconic image in our country. He was being called vibrant, and others thought he was very radical. What are your early thoughts and reflections of your father? Having a father like that, a dominant figure, not just in your home or in Chinsali, in Zambia, in Africa, and across the world, very influential even in India. How did that affect you? What were your perceptions, especially in your early formations?
Okay, so the freedom struggle at the beginning, I think, took my father away, because there were imprisonments and so forth, and sometimes they had to hide. So I remember in the very, very early years, I think I remember my mother more because she was the one who was there. But eventually, when things started settling down, and I think the first time really that I remember being with my father a lot was when we had to go to Tanzania. And we traveled to Tanzania in a truck. I remember that must have been, I think, 1962 or something, because UNIP had offices in Dar es Salaam, which were being run by Mr. Robert Makasa. And I remember that journey to Tanzania. I must have been, I don't know, maybe 4 years old, but I remember that journey very well, that we're in a lorry and we arrived in Tanzania. And I think 2 years ago when I went to Tanzania, I actually asked the people there to find the house that we had lived in. But nobody could locate it, which was really sad. But nobody could locate it. But Zambia, Northern Rhodesia at that time, UNIP had an offices in Dar es Salaam, from which they were running. They were actually running, for me, one of the most interesting things they were running there was a scholarship program, which years later, an academician from a university actually asked me to translate some of the letters that were going between Robert Makasa and the students that he was looking after. There were students in Germany, in America, in England, and so forth. And it was very interesting for me to read those letters. The reason why the university asked me to translate those letters was because they were all written in Bemba, because they didn't want that if they're intercepted, people would actually read them in English. So they were encouraged to write in the local language. So those letters were given to me, and I had to translate them. And it was very interesting because I was impressed by how forward-looking UNIP was, actually, because there was literally a very the whole idea of equality, of women as well as men being awarded these scholarships was actually very, very, it was implemented. It was very active. And I said, wow, I guess UNIP had, already had this equality thing going, because I read letters from women who were on scholarships. They were in Germany, they were wherever. I read letters from men who were in Germany and so forth. And some of those, of course, became prominent people. But so I remember that trip to Tanzania. I think I remember.
I just wanted to, Mulenga, I just wanted to fill in there. Many people will not understand why UNIP had an office before independence in Dar es Salaam. So the OAU at the time, many countries were not independent other than Ghana and a few countries that had been independent. So the OAU set up a liberation office where it housed many liberation movements in Dar es Salaam. And I think we only took over the burden when Zambia became independent in 1964, because then we began to house some of, especially, the ones from Zimbabwe, Namibia, Mozambique, Angola. But the Dar es Salaam office where UNIP was based, where you went, is because, there was this liberation office, and your interaction probably was with many leaders that became leaders of Africa later.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. But also, I think UNIP also got a helping hand from Ghana, I think a lot. Because, when I was going through my father's documents after he died, it was very interesting to see how many, how many of these leaders were in touch, but, letters from Kwame Nkrumah, they were really, they really cross-pollinated, they really spoke and advised and, guided each other very well. The countries like Ghana, who had gotten their independence long before us, they were guiding. There were a lot of letters from Kwame Nkrumah that were just guiding my father. This is how you do this. And, when he had questions, there were letters also from like some of them, Mozambique, Angola, Augustino Neto and all those people. It was a very rich occasion, I think, between those leaders of that time. And let me just add that the Kente, remember I think on the interview I said that my father was not buried in a coffin, but the cloth that he was wrapped in before the other, the cattle hide and reed mat, and also the cloth that he was, that we wrapped him in, was the cloth that was given to him by Kwame Nkrumah, the Kente. And that Kente, actually, he shared it in two, and he gave half of it to Kenneth Kaunda. So the two of them, I think in a lot of the independence pictures, you'll see that they're wearing the same Kente. That Kente was from Kwame Nkrumah, and Kwame Nkrumah gave it to my father before independence.
That's a wonderful piece of history.
Struggle.
So that wraparound, that Kente from Ghana, it came from your father, and he shared it with Dr. Kaunda, because Dr. Kaunda in the early 60s became synonymous with the Kente, and many African leaders adopted it. It was more authentic than than the Western suits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and this is actually quite for me. I was contracted by Cabinet Office to oversee the 50th anniversary celebrations, and I remember when I was on the night of the 24th. Kenneth Kaunda was coming to come and see the performances and so forth, and so I went to see him. And I was very gratified that when he walked out of the lift where I had gone to receive him, he was wearing that Kente. And
wow,
that really warmed my heart. Yeah, it was like seeing my father, in that Kente. Yeah.
The independence, like you stated, that if you look at the history of our country, the political history of our country, you have the first welfare association formed in 1912. You have the first industrial strikes in 1935. Many people wonder how that was coordinated from Luanshya to Chitilabombwe, from Ndola to Chingola, but the strike occurred at the same time. You have the first formations in 1948 of a trade union, Dr. Mixtalewanika and others. 1953, the leadership of the party now that was formed, the ANC, changes. From Mixtalewanika, it comes to Harry Mwanga Nkumbula. And the Secretary General is Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, and your father. The two of them who had left Chinsali as teachers, all of a sudden are thrust into these national affairs. They are heading the ANC as Secretary General, and another one having a key issue. Then there's that momentous period, like you said, when you were born, when there was a break apart, because people felt maybe the old man, the blood and agency of young people. So young Kapwepwe and young KK demanded that, we needed to, I think the thrust was independence in Ghana, and people thought they were now very late. I recite that story because your father doesn't become vice president. Many people thought he would be president, actually, but things begin to fashion out around 1961, and Dr. Kaunda begins to take center stage. He doesn't even become vice president. He has to wrestle the vice presidency to Chitandika Kamanga in 1968 when he won in the contest that took place in UNIP at the conference. And then the marginalization starts. Just walk us through. There are two birds from Chinsali walking together. Love for the country and love for one another. Then this drift and then, the breakaway, and then the difficulties and the persecution. Just walk us through that process.
Yeah. So as I said, on the day we were born, there was a walkout from an ANC meeting, and my father actually led that walkout out of the meeting with Nkumbula. The last person who actually walked out was Kenneth Kaunda. I think he was trying to be at least diplomatic, I think, about the breakup. But my father was actually a firebrand, and he once his mind was made, that was it. Yeah. So he walked out with some of the others, but Kenneth Kaunda actually stayed for a while and I think tried to explain the situation to Harry Manga and Kumbula, why these young firebrands, as you say, these ones had become impatient. These young Turks, they had become impatient that, what, we're not going to get independence if we're going to keep on just talking. So they walked out. And I remember listening to a recording of my father who said, the thing about me and Kenneth is that we complement each other. And my father said, I am the one who take action, immediately around an issue. But he said Kenneth is the one who said, no, oh, what about this? Let's think about this. Let's think about that. So he says Kenneth was always slowing me down in a good way, and so he felt they were very good in foil for each other, because one was very quick to act, and the other one would be much slower and make my father pause sometimes and say, okay, let's maybe there's another way. So my father, I remember he was laughing when he was doing that interview, and he was saying, yeah, that was how they worked. And I tend to think that I think they did help each other, yeah, in terms of how the other ruled. Because I think one of the things, because sometimes you listen to these conversations because my father is on the phone with KK or something, and I think one of the things that was very pronounced, and which I think helped KK, because I think when you are in a position of leadership like the president, the most important asset I think you can have is someone who can be totally frank with you, who can tell you when you're going wrong, when things are not the way that you had discussed or whatever. Who can really criticize you, and tell you the real deal, the real thing. And I think my father was that for KK. And when you are a leader, criticism is important. Surrounding yourself with people who do not criticize you, I think, is one of the biggest fallacies. You will fall. So there was that very good working relationship. But I think at some point, my father felt that the country was not going in the direction that they had envisioned. So he resigned from the UNIP government, especially after the 1968 stuff, which I think brought out a lot of regionalism and marginalization and all that. So he resigned. But I do have a recording somewhere where Kaunda is saying, I have considered Kapwepwe's resignation, and I am, we have talked, and he's coming back, and I am going to give him, a position and all that. So there was even enough to make up, even after the first kind of breach. But eventually my father said, no, I am out. And I must say, I remember the day when my father actually left government, because he walked into the yard with his files and things, and that kind of shocked me, because I was, why, what are you doing here with your folders? And he said, oh, I've resigned, because like, where's your car? He says, no, I've resigned, and I'm no longer a minister. And so many years later, when I was, I think it was when I was working at Cabinet Office, I met the actual driver who had been my father's driver, and he told me the story from his perspective and said, your father refused to get in the car for me to drive him home for the last time, because he said I said, no, you can't walk home. I have to drive you. And my father said, are you allowed to give lifts to ordinary citizens in your car? And the guy said, no, actually, I'm not. So he said, well, I'm now an ordinary citizen of this country, so I can't get into that car, and you can't drive me because you're not allowed to. I'll walk home. And so he walked home. And for me, that was, of course, a lesson in integrity, my father would not accept what was not legally, his to enjoy. So as far as he was concerned, as soon as that letter and that resignation was accepted, he was an ordinary citizen, and he walked home. So I remember that very well. So of course, we had to move, find a place to stay. It was very difficult. Immediately, my father resigned. The tables turned. Kapwepwe became a pariah. There was massive campaigns to defame him. I think my father has literally is responsible for the defamation law in this country, because he sued the Daily Mail and the Times of Zambia for defamation, and he was awarded quite a bit of, or in those days, some money. But the law of defamation you literally quote the Kapwepwe case, because it was one of those things that I think were one of the first. And so there was that onslaught of negativity. A lot of people would not associate with us. It was very difficult to find anywhere to stay. And just to say that when we had absolutely nowhere to stay now, and my father was already in prison, he was detained, it was Harry Mwanga Nkumbula who gave us a home to stay. He said to my mother, I will send my sister back to Namwala, and you can move into my house in Livala. So we stayed in Harry Mwanga Nkumbula's house until our house in Chinsali was completed, and we moved to Chinsali. My father came out of detention. He was in detention for about a year. And when he came out of detention, the house in Chinsali was completed, and we moved there. So there was an attempt at some, because I think everybody wanted somehow Kaunda and Kapwepwe somehow to get back together, although there was a lot of stuff had happened in between. My father did decide to rejoin UNIP and see whether he could contest. That didn't work out very well. Again, he was blocked, and he really couldn't stand for elections. So, a long history. These two, Kaunda and Kapwepwe, came a long way. Their mothers were friends. We, the children, were friends. We were very locked in. In terms of the families
Mulenga,
knowing each other.
I know you are cruising us through history, and we'll come to the substantive because we still want to know about you. But you are making it casual. Mm-hmm. It was, I think, the most difficult period, both for Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe, your father, and for the country.
Yeah.
Because it's those traumatic changes that occurred when he won in 1968 as vice president of the party, beating Ruben Chitandika Kamanga, who was sitting vice president, beaten. And their constitution required that the party vice president of UNIP was an automatic vice president of the country. And he became vice president for the period 1968 and I think to 1971. In between, he was even minister of finance. But the fallout was extremely dramatic, because in one time in 1968, Dr. Kaunda resigned, because he had been beaten. So all of a sudden he began to brand Kapwepwe as tribalist, like there's this Bemba hegemony trying to crowd me out of the space. By 1971, Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe forms a political party, UPP, where he even won a by-election in Mufulira without going there. But it didn't take long. Kaunda banned that political party in 1972 because first it was sweeping the areas, like northern Luapula, then Copperbelt, and other areas. And Nalumino Mundia had also formed his party in Western Province. Dr. Kaunda clearly felt, insecure and banned the party. Many people I know, you're from Chinsari, and many people we know, our people speak of that period as a very dark period. They were arrested, tortured, beaten, sidelined, and many people never recovered from during that period. So I understand you are making it casual, it's history, but when we have a guest like you, we want to pick the insights. Let me rush you to his death during this difficult period. In 1978, he tries to stand. He's banned. They beat him in Kamwala. Very sad period. But in 1980, and when he dies, you talked about the funeral and just what happened at the funeral. So I wanted to play that funeral. Then you walk us through exactly what happened. Then we tackle the current issues of our country. Let me see if I have that video of the burial of your father. I know that brings both fond and sad memories. Tell us what was happening. You attended this funeral.
Yes. And just to say that, some of the, after the KBN interview, people were saying, why is she talking as though she can even remember her father? I don't know how old people think I am because my father died in 1980 and I graduated from the University of Zambia in 1981. So, I was an adult. But, my father, the weeks before my father died, the government of that time raided our home and they were searching. They said they had intelligence. They said that there was an armory that was being created, and it was somewhere under our house, that house you can see in the video there. So they came and they dug up. They dug everywhere. Of course, there was no armory of any kind. And then they charged my father. I think he had a firearm that was not licensed. And there was some animal skins that had been gifts that were given to him from, when he was foreign minister, I think. And so he was charged on possession of a firearm without a license or whatever. But he was detained. And so the build up to my father's death was actually something that was very there was tension. Yeah, my father traveled to the Copper Belt because he was coming to Lusaka to see his lawyer because, of course, now he had all these cases to answer. So I was, at that time, I can't remember what we had been writing about as university students, but the university was closed. So I had gone to spend that time with my elder sister in Kalulushi. And so my father traveled to Kalulushi because he had some documents for me. Um, I, I was trying to get my passport because I was supposed to travel and go and see my twin sister in London. She was studying in London at that time. So he arrived. He arrived. It was a Thursday afternoon. He arrived in Kalulushi, and um, everything was normal. I remember we cooked dinner, and I I guess I'm the last of his children who spoke to him. We had dinner. We chit chatted about different things. He was cautioning me because he saw me putting a lot of salt in my food, and he's saying, do you want to be like me? You don't put so much salt to be hypertensive. We had that chat. He asked me about university, so we had a long chat. Then he said, my father was a fan of wrestling. He loved to watch wrestling. So he says, where's the TV? Because he couldn't see the TV in the sitting room. I said, oh, actually, it's gone for repairs. It's being repaired, so there's no TV in the house. So he says, oh, I still want to watch the wrestling. So I said, okay. So he said, okay, I'll go down to. There was another family friend who lived not far from where we were, and he said, I'll walk down there and I'll go and watch wrestling from there. So I said, okay. He was with a cousin of ours. I said, okay, you take the front door keys because my sister, because she's a medical doctor, she didn't have, she wouldn't be able to, and she had the keys for the side door. So I said, take the front door keys because, Wasampas got the other keys. So he took the front door keys and they left. And then after about, I think it was maybe just under 2 hours, I heard somebody knocking on my window and, yelling for me to wake up. So I went, because I had fallen asleep at that time. So I went to the door, and the same cousin he had walked to the house with was saying, he has collapsed. He's collapsed. He's not talking. So me and another cousin, we dressed up and we ran. It was late now. So we ran to the house of that gentleman. And when I walked into the house, my father was lying on the floor. He was vomiting, and I knelt down and said, "Are you, Dad?" This was in Kalulushi, yes. Yeah. I said, "Dad, are you okay? Can you hear me?" He was unconscious. So we managed to call the ambulance. The ambulance came. I don't know where everybody went. I can't remember where everybody went, but I remember having to carry my father into the ambulance. I sat with him at the back. I was trying to hold his face, down because he kept vomiting, so that he didn't choke on his own vomit. So eventually we got to the hospital. By this time, we'd managed to get hold of my sister, who was, she was on duty. So she was doing the rounds. I think she had gone to attend to a patient somewhere. But just as our ambulance was arriving, she was also arriving. So at least now my elder sister was there. So then they admitted him. He was in a coma by this time. They started stabilizing him and trying to get his pressure down. He had a stroke. Trying to get his pressure down. That was a Thursday evening. Friday wasn't improving. He became conscious, but because he was paralyzed on one side, he couldn't talk. He was trying to signal. He was trying to signal to us to find him a pen and a piece of paper. But sometimes when you have a stroke, you don't realize that you've lost some capabilities, like writing, for example. So he tried to write on a piece of paper. He couldn't write, and I think that agitation also just made things worse. And by Saturday, the next day, he was getting very frustrated. By Saturday, the next day, he had another stroke. And so by Saturday, around 16 hours, he passed away. So, I was there. The nurse asked me to close his mouth, close his eyes. I held his mouth. I, held his hand. My sister and I, the people, my siblings who were there, we had to make the decision, or the doctors did everything they could. And we had to make the decision that perhaps they'd done what they could. And so, yeah, he passed away. And I remember when that happened, now it was what next? My sister gave me the duty of now phoning everybody to announce, to tell people that my father had passed away. And we of course also informed government that my father had passed away. Government did reach out after they heard, and they asked how they could help. And there was so much, there were so many people and so forth. Of course, we knew we couldn't manage all this by ourselves as well. So government said we can step in and help. So the coffin that we put my father in to carry him back home to Chinsali was donated by a family in Ndola called the Cottons. I think they had a funeral parlor. So they donated and said, no, we'll donate the coffin. So when we carried him home, that is the coffin that we carried him home in a Zaf aircraft. And I remember that when we landed, there was a lot of anger. There was it was very tense. People were very angry. The people of Chinsali.
No,
very angry.
After a decade of persecution from his erstwhile friend and former friend, the persecution that occurred to UPP and members, and then there was now a full infrastructure of the one-party state. People didn't have to know the details of the death of your father. They just assumed, look, Kaunda must have something to do with it, hence the anger you are talking about.
Yes, hence the anger. The conclusion was just that, no, this is obviously, some hand at play. It's the government, it's Kaunda, it's whatever. So there was a lot of anger. I remember when we landed in that Zaf aircraft, I remember hearing, a lot of insults and a lot of it was very tense. So we went home. As I explained in the KBN interview, my father was from the royal family. He was from the Bulombo line. And just to say that I have recreated our family tree. And so if you go all the way back, my father's great grandfather was Mumbo. Mumbo was the father of the first Chitimukulu Chilufa Chama Tayabini. So that's the line that my father comes from. So when all this was happening, of course, there was the government coming in. What do we do? Can KK come to the funeral and so forth? Yeah, and as I said, we agreed for him to come. This was someone who had been, a very good friend. They'd been very good friends, childhood friends, teenage friends, everything. So we said yes, he can come. I'm just laughing because people who are criticizing me about this are saying, well, your father wasn't even a president, so why are you comparing the Lungu situation with this one? I am, when I'm talking about this situation, when I was talking about this situation, I was really referring to the behavior of Kaunda, not that my father was president or anything like that. I was referring to the fact that, when Kaunda got up to speak, he was not allowed to speak by us, and he complied. But yes, you saw in the video that my father was in his body was wrapped in a reed mat.
Mulenga, just to add a bit, sometimes people don't understand when we say things like what you had stated about your family accepting that the president should come, but the president will not speak. I don't know if people can picture who Dr. Kaunda is in 1980. Look, he has just held a Commonwealth meeting where all heads of states, from the Commonwealth were here. He had just danced with the Queen. This is a man that would walk in White House in Washington. He would walk in Moscow. He would walk in Peking in China. He was a regular visitor in London. He had become a huge statesman. And the movement in the country, although Dr. Kaunda kept on growing in stature, there are many people that felt, for example, like the way Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe was treated, who many people thought he was a president we never had. You and I are historian. And verse to the dear audience, when Mulenga speaks, you should understand she's also a historian. Even she's a historian, even about her own father. If you've looked at the material, she gathers even about her own father and the documents she has. So for the audience need to know, when you are speaking, you're not speaking just as a daughter. First, you're also a big historian and cultural historian. So first, it was brave for the family. Two, Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe was no small stature in himself. He had been vice president of our country. He'd been an author, well respected across Africa, and he had been going through this persecution. He might not have a title of a president, but you could see even from the burial how he was held as both royalty and literally like a former vice president or former president, you know. So just continue. I just thought I could compliment that and put in perspective.
Yeah, so you can see that in the video you see KK arriving, and I think one of the things that when KK arrived, the tension rose, because as I said, especially in Chinsali, there was a lot of anger. The tension rose. There was this tension, but he was accorded. He came into the house, and I remember he really, really cried. He cried. He really, really cried. That kind of stuck with me because I his voice. He cried. Musowa, yeah, Musowa sana. So you will see that we're kind of like coming from behind the house because it was part of the tradition that before we went to bury my father, we had to go once around the house and then go to the grave. So that's what you're seeing there, where people are coming from behind the house. My father had shown us exactly where he wanted to be buried, long before he died. So we knew exactly where he was going to be buried, and we knew exactly where my mother should be buried. The two of them chose the space and they said, we will be buried here. So they are buried not very far from the house, actually, but it's in a very beautiful spot, especially now because their graves now overlook the Lungu River. So the instructions that we received from my father, where to bury him and all that stuff, and that, tradition must be followed, all those things, we followed them. That's why you see the reed mat and everything. Of course, as a member of the royal family as well, once that happened as well, who we call the special branch, the people from the Bulombwa line automatically arrive and they start doing what they have to do. So they came and they did all the traditional stuff. The rituals, yeah, they directed the procession, how the body was going to be carried. You can see they are singing. What they are singing is one of those songs that Bemba sing when the warriors are returning from war. You can see also that they keep throwing impemba,
the white powder. Have we lost her? Thank you, guys. Please share the broadcast. We are hosting
ceremony.
Mulenga Kapwepwe, an author, historian, and she's a daughter to the former second vice president of our country. Ruben Kamanga was our first vice president. Second vice president was Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe. And she's just reliving the details. I thought I lost you there, but you are back. You were narrating. Just give us, for me, some insights how the family could say, Your Excellency, you will not speak at the funeral. and also the courage of Dr. Kaunda to come to the funeral, because the tensions were palpable. Many people at the
They
time
were.
speculated that he would not come, but he came. He
Yes.
appeared, and like you are saying, many people speak to when he broke down, the way you are explaining where he broke down, and participated in the burial process. Baria Vikamona, I saw Baria Muvikamo Amalova, but he was not allowed to speak. Just speak to that, and yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, there had been that debate as to what aspects of the funeral he could participate in and so forth, And I think the speech is something that we didn't want him to speak. So when it came to the time for him to speak, and he stood up to speak, my sister, and she's not even the oldest one, my sister stood up and said, there will be no speeches here. You are not going to speak. We don't want any speeches from you, in essence. And as I said, to his credit, Dr. Kaunda turned around and went and sat down, and he didn't speak. He honored our wish that he should not speak at the funeral. And and I remember I think the gasp and the disbelief that you could literally feel, after my sister said that. As you said, Kaunda was was a president with all capital letters. He was a president of a one-party state. He had total power. So it was a very unexpected thing, I think, at that point. But he actually honored what we wanted, and he went and sat down and he didn't speak. And
I also
I think,
credit Dr. Kaunda that he was such a big man. You can imagine the humiliation where the president stands ready to speak, and then he's asked by this young little girl that you won't speak. So his decision to honor the wishes of the family, I think for me is my take out there, that you have admiration from Dr. Kaunda, his humility, whatever his weaknesses were, would always kick in like he did and withdrew despite the perceived public embarrassment. And like I said, Dr. Kaunda in 1980 is not your small stature. You can count among 5 leaders in the world, and Dr. Kaunda will probably be among them. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to take you. You are a historian of women and women leadership.
The embarrassment that he suffered on that day, I can't even think how to measure it, because it was very embarrassing for a sitting president to to be told not to speak. But as you said, I think that his humility in just stepping back, as I said in the other interview, I think it actually left the door open for for relations to be reset, even long after that, and they were reset. It's funny because we, the children of Kapwepwe, would sit and laugh and joke and tease him and do whatever and laugh with him, years later. But it is to the grandchildren of Kapwepwe, that he would open up, especially to one particular grandchild, that he would open up about his feelings of what had happened, his remorse, his regrets, whatever. He could open up to the other generation, to the next generation. With our generation, I think we just accepted that had been what it was, and we continued, and we could talk and laugh and joke. And I'm a playwright, and he would come plays, which was very nice for me, having my father, watching my plays because a chance. But I think just honoring our wishes and leaving the door open really played into the fact that even by the time he was dying, I think I saw him like 3 months before, we sat and chatted, and he was very confident he was going to turn 100, in 3 years' time. We had all that chat. So for me, I think what the point I was trying to make was, here was this man who was very, very publicly embarrassed by a request from us, but who had the humility to accept, and who had the humility even, as it took time, over time, to still say and reach out, so that we could mend the fences and so forth. That, for me, I think is a hallmark of how big a person is, how big a person is in terms of, what he is willing to take to fix something. Yeah. So for that, I think I'm eternally grateful because.
No, thank you very much. Chinsali has so much history that, it should be declared a museum. I want you to speak to some issues. Someone was saying, there's currently some riotous situation in Chinsali at Robert Kapasa Makasa University, and people didn't understand. Kapasa Makasa University, what is this? But you gave us some insight who he was. He ran the office in Dar es Salaam, for the liberation of our country, and, offered many scholarship opportunities to early leaders that went to Denmark, that went to India, that went to UK. So, that tells me the Lenshina massacre. Your father was minister in the formative government before we got independence, after they had won that election in 1963. And again, for me, I regard that as a dark period in the history of our country. First of all, we don't know how many people died. They say between 700, some put it up to 3,000, depending on which historian you are speaking to. It was a dark period because it was an issue of freedom of worship. And this young woman literally threatened the hegemony of established churches. And they therefore called her all sorts of names and gave a decision to the issues of the mass. What are your reflections there? And it's like, that's a history we have not attended to. We all look away. In your history reflections, have you come across this matter? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, in fact, one of the women we feature in the Women's History Museum. If you go to the Women's History Museum, our museum is a digital museum, so anybody can visit it. You don't need to come to Zambia or anything like that. Just go to your phone, Women's History Museum, and you're in the museum. Lenshina was actually one of the women that we've addressed in the Women's History Museum because I think she was a woman who found herself in a very, very awkward place, between the church and government. And both had their own insecurities about what she was preaching. And therefore, both the church and the government actually, I think, played a role in what came to be probably the largest genocide that we've had in this country, because the mass graves that, when you're driving towards the hospital in Chinsali, there were mass graves there. And if you go to the White Fathers Library, unless you have a very strong constitution, it is horrible to look at the pictures of the Lenshina massacre, if you want, because many, many, many people died, and we have not really kind of revisited that history properly. And I think even the largest number of Zambian refugees resulted from that. There was an exodus from Chinsali and other parts of the country where the Lumpa Church had actually spread to, and into the most of them ran into Congo. And so she had this huge impact on our history. And, when I was talking to my sister recently, she was saying, at the Muchinga Expo, she was actually saying, one of the best exhibits, actually, one of the best stalls at the just ended Muchinga Expo was the Lenshina Church. The Lenshina Church came and they exhibited as the Lumpa Church, and she said there it was so professionally done, it was so well done. So her church lives on. Her church is very, very much alive and living on, and apparently even doing very professional exhibitions of that history. So I was very happy to hear that actually the church has carried on, and they've documented. Her story is so interesting in so many ways. So when I was working with the women in prison, I made it a point actually to just go and sit in the cell. She had a separate cell from all the other women, and just reflect on how it must have been for her, because she was an ordinary woman. She was a very ordinary woman, but she found herself caught up in this whole political and religious maelstrom that she literally had no control over. These two superpowers, the church and the state, overpowered her. She was imprisoned. She escaped at one point. She was imprisoned again. She was put into exile. To the audience is that her church is still alive, well and alive. A lot of the refugees who had fled from here and settled in Congo, they came back and they were allowed to settle in Chazanga, in Lusaka. So that Chazanga area is very much a Lumpa Church area, because that's where the refugees, when they returned from Congo, they went and relocated there. The government gave them land to settle there. So that's where they are. But her church is still alive, and her history is still alive, thankfully, through her own option.
Yes. I can see callers want to come in, they want to call, and for very good reason that we're privileged that you are here. Clearly, Alice Lenshina, when the history is put in proper perspective, other than the tragedy of the massacre, you find that she began to run the largest church stretching from Malawi, Tanzania, up to DRC. Who are the other powerful women you've profiled here? In the digital library, why did you pick these women as? Why did you pick them? How influential were they? You've put Julia Chikamoneka Longo. You've put Lueji Wankonde. You've put Mukwae. You have put Mwape.
Yes.
You've put Mwenya and other figures, and I wish Zambians, we can form part of in our syllabus to learn our own history. We know about Europe, Canada, and we barely know about these powerful women that lived. Just speak to one or two of them that inspired you and why you put them there. Then we open the phone lines.
Okay. So Mukwae, for example, this is the Lozi. She was a Lozi ruler, but I think our interest in her was also the fact that she's the one who actually fought the Portuguese on the other side. Angola. The Portuguese were encroaching into her kingdom, and she why are you coming into my kingdom to collect taxes from my people? And the district commissioner, the white man who was there, said, the only way you resolve this is if you write to the Italian government. The Italian government was the government that was given the responsibility of drawing up borders and so forth after the scramble for Africa. The 1884 scramble for Africa, where the European powers divided Africa amongst themselves. So Mukwae actually wrote to the Italian government and said, "Can you make the border clearer, because I have people who are encroaching on my kingdom." So the reason why the Zambia, for example, has that straight line on the western province side, there's that completely straight line.
One of the
on the
straightest
western part.
borderline.
Yes, the straightest borderline. That was because of Mukwai, and it's because the Italians decided that we just follow the 38th parallel. So so that border, the western border of Zambia, was literally because of a woman writing to the government that was in charge of making borders in Europe at that time, and insisting that the border be drawn because she was getting problems from the incursions of the Portuguese from Angola. So those are just some of the interesting aspects of history, of our history, and the women and their leadership. Longo is from the Sala people in Mumbwa, and she actually led an all-woman army in her time to fight the Makololo. Yeah.
Wow.
Truly amazing. People should actually go. The Sala people celebrate her on the day of Longo. They celebrate her. There's a traditional ceremony to celebrate her amongst the Sala people. So yeah, we have a lot of interesting women. We have celebrated women from the 17th century up to now, because we managed to do a series that actually covered all the way up to the current modern women. So very interesting. There's a teenager, Mwamba Mbala. She was part of the Cha-Cha-Cha movement, and she was actually, the British couldn't locate her because they thought it was a man, because she was really good at organizing sabotage, and they thought it can't be a woman, but it was just a teenage girl, and she was part of the Cha-Cha-Cha movement. But as life always has it, somebody betrayed her and described her to the British authorities. And one day, when she was going to perform a sabotage operation, they found her, and they actually shot her dead. But the main street in Mbala is named after her. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting histories in terms of our women, and I encourage women everybody to visit our museum so that you can read. We've done maybe 44. Even the Winnie Mandela Foundation approached us, and we've done one on Winnie Mandela as well, which was launched in Johannesburg, and it is shown in the Winnie Mandela Museum.
Yeah. Thank you, Mulenga. When we return, dear viewers, you can call, but I want you to come and answer. The Minister of Finance, National Planning, put you on the spot. You had called, you had given a term, you have educated all of us that there's a term for government who has officials that lie. Just like we have government officials that steal, it's called, a kleptocratic government.
Kleptocracy.
You have a fresh term,
Yeah.
and the minister accused you that they are not lying. And I want you to come and speak to that as we open the phone lines. So just take a moment, drink some water, and then come back to the broadcast. And our dear viewers, continue to share the broadcast. Thank you for the audience that has turned up. And let's hear from Mulenga Kapwepwe.
He was born on the 12th of April 1922 and died on the 26th of January 1980. Did you know he spoke fluent English, Bemba, Lozi, Namwanga, and Swahili? Did you know he served in the Northern Rhodesian government as Minister for Native Agriculture? Did you know he delivered the first speech by Zambia after her admittance into the United Nations? Did you know he influenced the change of dress code for Parliament to include traditional attire when he refused to wear a Western-style suit as per requirement? Did you know he represented Zambia at the state funeral service for Sir Winston Churchill, former British Prime Minister? Did you know as Vice President he also held the additional portfolio of Minister of Finance? Did you know that while in opposition, he won a parliamentary seat in Mufulira without campaigning, as he was barred from doing so? Did you know that he authored 6 books, played the guitar, was an avid tennis player, and studied in India? This April 2022, Simon Mulenga Kapwepwe would have turned 100 years old. the Kapwepwe family wishes to announce the centenary birthday celebration of the late Mr. Simon Mwansa Kapwepwe. Please.
In her statement, as I said, Ms. Kapwepwe accused the government of lying, and she dismissed the government's assertion that debt restructuring so far has covered about 94% of the eligible external debt. Instead, she asserted that according to the report of the IMF and also one of our own professionals, only 44% of the eligible debt have been covered in terms of restructuring. So, the question is, what is the truth? And I want to be very clear.
Thank you, callers. The line is open. Mulenga will answer the Minister of Finance and your questions. So let's take some questions quickly so that she can combine the answer to the Minister and to your questions. Yes, caller, please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Mwamba Wesu. Good evening, Mulenga. I'm Anonymous.
Thank you, Anonymous.
I just want to find out, Kuriba Mama Mulenga, what role did Mama Chikamoneka play in the history of Cha-Cha-Cha? And I also want you to tell me the meaning of Cha-Cha-Cha really and how it started. And also what role can women play? Because we have seen there are very few women parliamentarians in Zambia. President balandira okutira no abana ndefo kubombasana n'abana kashina ba youth, but it hasn't happened. So what role can banamayo play as compared to kuri ba mama Chikamoneka na kaka mukashana mwachilanda poko bashutire ba British protectorate baba letuteka nomba emkwa ibanja sukama question ya fula.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador.
Oh, caller, just a minute. I think, yeah, just a minute. Yes, caller, please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
My name is Kabungo from Kashowe, DRC, Peshilia, diaspora. Yeah, so, Emmanuel, nashafu kuipsha wa mpundu wa Mulenga. First of all, if nashafu asano kuipusha, nga pali ifi tukwete pali nomba. Na tukwato bwafya pali nomba. Tukwete wakateka, awa tushire, bafwa na nomba tatulashika. Noma nachafu kuipsha wa mayo ba mpundu wa Mulenga. Ukweba ati bushe pali ilili ya shiro tatuashika na nomba bakateka. Bali tenda poni shita ba rufishi bena wali rufishe po aba fiashi. Elio kwasa buka ne mpasase. Iyo mpasase ya ishirenga ukweba ati bakateka bali poni lanshita bakaunda. Why has that take place kulia nefi achitike nali mfapo tuma video papaka tito otwarela ba populore fi achitike nomba bushewa mayiwa Mulenga bali kala po panshi bali konka po insteya ko bati tuba konkana na ba president wa Hakainde baya bashita ko advise pali lienstana bwa sangiro ku mubu sanso ngubu nefi ba achitire abanabo bakaunda. Elio kabiri bamayo wa Mulenga chimbyo chinasafa viku ukulanda bushe pali bana mayo bantu bana mayo mubuteko banono elio funa ishivangu mfwa bana mayo abengi balanda ati bana mayo tabaitemwa bushe mukubika bana mayo chapamo ukwevati navo vengarasangwa mufukulo ifikalamba muvuteko na mutu ampani utu apusana fishi mule chitapo vamayo olo chimbi ichakusharikisha kwali vedi ashitutarikana kung'anda navalumendo navakashana omoto afyalilwa varetwe vashikulu varetu shimikireri ashati ala va Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe valipere speech one time kuvulaya kuvasungu pachililo eri vasala ndati muchivemba ati I don't want any impasse and any intrundi ushefyali fishinkana ngufyali fyachine
ate vashire create ama words impasse and intulubundi make them into English. Yo balatwasuka, thank you very much. Hello caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Yes. Good evening, Mama. Good evening, Mama Mulenga Mpundu. I want just to say thank you very much for that rich history, and we have learned a lot. I know that I think one of these fine days, Mama, she should just come back and talk about the history of this country, so that at least Zambians we can learn from her. And you know, it's important that a lot of people, we thought that what is happening, like the burial of President Edgar Lungu and the impasse with the Lungu family. Little did we know that there was an impasse between the Kaunda and the Kapwepwes, but because of the humility of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, we have heard that they told him not to speak, and he made sure that he did not speak, and that's leadership. May he so rest in peace, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Then I hope our president can also draw a lesson from there, that whatever people are saying is not that they are trying to compare because he was a president. It's about leadership. President is just a title. Then lastly, I want to ask Madam Mulenga Kapwepwe, I've seen in social media people are proposing a name that he should be the running mate to Honorable Makebi Zulu. What is our take? Thank you.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from. Hello, caller. Oh, I've got this caller who's been calling from the moment you appeared. But somehow, I don't know what's happened. Let's see. Maybe I call them back. Let's just see, because they've been calling from the moment we began. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from. Hello? Uh-oh. I don't know this caller. It could be the network back home. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Ambassador Mwamba.
Good evening.
Nami Poshamayo ba Mpundu Mulenga Kapwepwe. Mkwai. Bishekuti natwalila ba ambassador kulande fende foki pisha ba Mulenga nangu.
Mkwai, you are live. You are live.
Na total. Oishinali andi mkwai ni nana nasi. Ndiko akaputa kuno fweko tuwa kala mkwai. Ba mayo ba Mulenga. Ba tatu Kapwepwe ba limbela ma books ayengi. Ilo tuwa lesa mbila tulemba ma schools after independence kuma 1968, 69. In the 70s, to ku primary school na ku high school. Kwa lamba ama books that ubuntu ngwa mjambo jambo. Na Africa wushe inflation.
Africa tuwa sevana.
Mkwai?
Africa tuwa sevana.
Africa tuwa sevana. Mukatikali de book Africa tuwa sevana o ubuntu ngwa mjambo jambo because yale ba syllabus, but still gata uchite chibemba. Mu library yaleba mu education system ya Zambia for yaikele. So twalebelenga nangutauli na Bemba period twalafe twabelenga. Ndefa ya ukuipusha kwa chintu chimwacho nangu mukatulanga ko ubushe kuti mwachita republish alama books ya batata. Nangu chishinga fai ko kuchita ngabena Zambia tukalembuluishe tukachita republish or reprint yala mabooks
And
abana
translate.
besu behistory yesu bantu government twapitana nayo yonse balifumya ama Zambian languages mu syllabus but kubusungu kukubulaya tuleyo nfa ku United Kingdom kwafuma ekisungu ukutila abasungu bakira kyalo nomba nabo baleka biloko kwa second and third and fourth languages hence ma syllabus yabo muli Spanish muli Italian muli na French n'ekisungu kyabwe ekyo kine English nomba ifo fwebene bakibemba kunoko twaba nekilozi nekitonga nekilenje nekiswaka nekisoli tabulefunda rather tabalefunda ififintu mu syllabus yesu ushe tukalala ndati fwebena Zambia at first language yesu nichinshi first language yesu twakwate mtundu 72 nomba balifumya mu syllabus ukubukita ama local languages chishi chinga chitika pomayo bamulenga pakwebo obuteko okutira na atuweshe ama local languages yesu muma mu syllabus ya kyalo kya Zambia tuweke shemo local languages ichilozi turesambirira ekitonga turesambirira ichilenje there were 8 languages ngoli ku northwestern Zambia twalelemba ichibemba bakuletela ka examination paper kobe muchibemba and your friends balelemba ichikaonde oluvale nga uli ku western balelemba ekilozi iwo wino we mubemba we mutonga walemba that paper the time yakulemba local language twale mama classrooms twaya mubemba class depending on the province ukoli limbi muli mofe babiri then the teacher ufunda maybe maths as long as ali chibemba they would come and cover you the 2 of you the 3 of you mwabelengage chika twafo kuchita understand if you chalo chaikele nechara twafo kuchiba identity yesu ifo fwebena Zambia fwebale fyala abana mumayanda balela ndefe ekisungu tekyumushinishe na pabantu mukitundu kyenu ukuthi apusuke awe namba bakapwepwe muri ali amabooks kwali ikintu kimu if I'm privileged to lay hands on that book kuti nabelenga nakasanga kalaka statement akale tweba kwati kula ngokweba titetu twikadide kufya abamuisa tetinji bushe exactly but ndelo mbokutilanga kuli way of accessing lama books bamulenga mulandi apa pamwela twishibe ko twingashita lama books tule ibelengera mayanda nangu tubelengele kwa abana besu bamu.
Thank you very much, my dear sister.
Thank you, Mulenga.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello?
Yes, caller. You are live on EMV. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
My name is Kaseba Mashila Kaseba.
Bakaseba, good to hear from you, my brother, and author too.
Thank you very much.
Make your contribution.
Yes, I'm still hearing. Yes, I'm still hearing the other caller.
Because wherever you are monitoring your activity is delayed. Just switch it off and just speak through the phone.
Oh, okay.
Proceed.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been following the debate that came from the KBN submission by Mama Kapwepwe. Yeah, I thought to observe one or two things. I think from the last discussion, the name of the sister has kind of remained anonymous. And I think, maybe she can put it there, but that should be Chirufia, who went on to become MMD MP. So to kind of put in perspective, I think that's for her to do, but to kind of put in perspective is that the Kapwepwe children have kind of come out differently. So the thinking has been, and what the public has kind of taken in the last few days is that the way Mama Mulenga Kapwepwe is coming out is almost the feeling of maybe the other children of the Kapwepwes. I think that must be clarified. That, for example, the sister who stopped Kaunda could still have a part of that feeling from 1980. So people want to think the feeling, the reconciliatory spirit that she's talking about generally runs through the children the same way. I think that should be put in perspective. And I think it is also to fast forward that this is the same woman who spoke to President HH when he went to deliver flower, and he, so to speak, told him off to kind of revisit history and retell history in the genuine sense. So I've tended to think that the public has also omitted that aspect, that this woman has featured again in the recent past under HH and before Lungu died, and has called for the Zambian history to be retold, as what Mulenga has just explained, as in dealing with her part. Yeah, so I thought...
Thank you, Wakasewa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have so many calls. Let me just take quickly the callers. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Good evening, Ambassador Mwamba.
Good evening.
And good evening, Ma'am Mulenga. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm calling you from South Africa. My name is Leo.
Speak louder, my brother. You seem to be very faint.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, but you're a bit faint. But speak out, yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Yes. I was just saying that thank you for picking up my call. My name is Leo. I'm calling you from South Africa.
Yes,
I
Leo.
don't speak to be specific. Yes, please. I've just been listening to the history, and it's actually beautiful to actually learn a few things that I've never come across though. But what I'm trying to ask Ma'am Mulenga is that with the wisdom and the whole entire knowledge that we have elder people like her in our country, what advice are they giving the president today? Because we have a president who is lying here in South Africa, and he's not just a president; he's one of the heroes that has gone to the history of Zambia, the history that they can't stop. And the family knew him as a father, not as a president, and they hold more rights towards him because before we knew him, they knew him first, and I believe they decide where they want to bury him, and I believe they have the right. They can't just be chained around and obviously be pushed to do things in a different way.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Good evening. I would rather. It's been so nice to listen to Mulenga Kapwepwe for the good history she's given us. The network here is very bad today, so I haven't been able to follow very closely. I wish that you being an artistic person and you have been in this art for a long time, please write books about this whole the story of your father from like your personal view, because many of us didn't know. My mother is in her 70s, and the story that she told us was, the coffin was broken out of anger because he didn't want the government involved. So that's the narrative that people even as old as that have. But now we get to hear this side of the story. And the other thing that has really made me want to call today is because I like how you explained to us a very significant thing about what we're currently dealing with, which is the impasse on the burial of the late 60th president. It's not so difficult, but I don't know what has become difficult, that people cannot allow the family to do as they have asked, because they are the people who lived with this person and they had many discussions. Obviously, they will know what they have had to deal with during his time outside government up to his death, and we should respect that and let them do what they want. It's like me, where I work, I have someone who reports to me who maybe does something wrong, an offense according to the company. and I issued disciplinary action against them, and they end up losing a job. Or maybe while they're serving a disciplinary, like time out, they happen to die. And then the company has sent a representative, and I insist that it has to be me because I was that person's boss. But the family does not want me there because there's certain tension. There's nothing that I'll lose if I let someone else represent me there. So I really hope that wisdom will fall on the right ears and the right thing will be done. Unlike some of these comments we're getting from people saying, no, this one was not a president or what and what. It's either they don't understand the gravity of the issue, or they just want to be blind and deaf for nothing. So thank you so much, Mulenga Kapwepwe, and I hope that we shall see that book soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from. Mwabombeni.
Nachipata kwa mashwano no nachirapo kubika kupadiri ili ashiyabanga shesu
Mkwai
tuchitafye regarding our sister weso abakaramba natwato bwafyo bukuru sana nga Muzambia lero no bwafyo tukwete natwate ntunguru shishire fo kuchitari light history ya charo chesu abarepero muchinshi kuma families yamo ayakankala sana to ashita respect muntu yachiro charo kutamba fina independence wine ngamwa munofo bale chita bale munika fe kwati bale fo afe kushitari right history ya charo chino ngata to change na flag wine bakachinja mune ni rupia rweso forward kare pari mposa mabwe bali mufunyapo Mshaba mwamba wesu mulenkonka.
Mkwai na basondwelele bwangu shikulu.
Na chirafu ya nsondwelele mkwe bati mungu mfuikishe bwino sana. Nga mwati mumone fye na urofye mi kadle ture ikarata iweme. Na example nafuma kutanzania oko. Ilio boma ni aimini nafye atashite kwa kame nshari pakabwe. Abantu na bena kunsara tupere kwa lefoturieko. Bamu ikata bamubika na mchifungo wani ye. Mobe na Zambia, uyu muntu le yakanye chalo. Noko bati afute history ya chalo chesu. Ture tumufunyepo.
Thank you very much, Muwafiashi.
Kumuchinga, kunozeni, na kuruwa pula. Na tumona, kuchasa bike chalo pamuliro.
Thank you, Muwafiashi Natasha sana. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from, so that we can allow Madam Kapwepwe to answer. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello?
Yes, caller, you are live. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Okay, is that myself?
Yes, it is.
Okay. My name is Henry Kabinga.
Yes, Mr. Kabinga.
Yes, Henry Kabinga. I'm a senior citizen in Zambia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kabinga. Yes, I remember you as a founder member of the UPND.
Exactly. And we've had a chat before
Okay.
you ended up going back.
Thank you. Kindly make your contributions quickly.
Thank you. The issue that has been brought up by especially the Minister of Finance responding to an individual in the name of Mulenga Kapwepwe, I found it fascinating and even intriguing. Here's a Home Minister putting up a press conference in order to respond to one individual over the issue of debt restructuring. Okay? Because according to Mr. Msogotwane, the debt restructuring has been at 94%. Now, the fact that Ms. Kapwepwe mentions that it's actually at a lower level, it's 44% or thereabouts, and the whole machinery comes to respond to this one individual. It's just, I'll call it crazy. Let me say this. People like Dr. Grieve Chelwa, okay, an accomplished economist, has come out and stated very clearly why this debt restructuring is not really at 92%. And he was very, very clear and said it was standing at something like 49%. Now, these guys, Mr. Msogotwane and his crew, are failing to answer Grieve Chelwa, an accomplished economist. They go for a soft target like Mulenga, so that actually, and the whole thing is just designed to it's a political theater, and they can't answer to the issues that are there.
Thank you, Mr. Kavinga.
Yes, no, just a little bit. They went on to talk about an MOU being like a binding agreement. No way. An MOU is never a binding agreement. And even when you look at their statement, they are very, very clear to say that actually, even the restructuring is that they put it at about 57%. Tell me something. If they had restructured at 92%, why is it that in the next maybe 3-4 years we shall be paying $1 billion in terms of
debt service,
debt repayment? Debt service, yes. Come on. If you have restructured 92%, there is no way you should be going into those numbers. And I go further. The reason why we had a default in 2020, which was called the COVID era default, when the PF was in power, was because of the high debt repayments, okay? And that is why that figure of 1 billion could not be paid, and that's why the PF failed to pay back. And to hear Mr. Hakainde Hichilema and his friends saying that actually they took this debt from -2%, I mean, rather, what did they call it? From the GDP from -2% to where they are putting it at 5%. They do not even take into account the fact that this COVID had a real effect on the whole economy. That is why all the economies, literally all economies, had negative growth during about 2020. And that's why the PF actually defaulted. Now to be told that, no, we took this thing from -2% and now we're put it at 5% positive from -2. It's just being disingenuous.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kavinga,
sorry?
Mr. Kavinga, quickly close. I just want to take the other 2-3 callers. The callers are so many.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, let me ask Mulenga to make a comment on that, because she was the one who they were responding to.
Yes,
Can Mulenga come up and tell her
she's going to answer. She's going to answer. I played
issue.
the video deliberately. It's one of the issues she will answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Kavinga.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from, and kindly be brief.
My name is, good evening. My name is Wally. I'm calling you from Kitwe.
Thank you, Wally. Make your contributions.
I want to greet my sister, Mulenga Kapwepwe.
Yes, she can hear you.
The video which I've seen my young mother, Freedom Wansamponga, with Bamayo coming out to the funeral house, it's just made me so happy. And thanks very much, and I wish you all the best.
Who was your mother? Who's in the video?
Freedom Wansamponga.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
She was a very young lady in 1980.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
My name is Reverend Edith Mutale, and I'm calling from Lusaka.
Alamayo, mwabombeni Your Excellency Ambassador Mulishani.
Indifyo mutende mulishani uko.
Ndita yo namiletelo mwana
Mulenga wandi mwapoleni.
Yo, she can hear you.
Oh, she can. Tata ni kuti nafua sio kulanda po ine nangu dali mombalile pamfwa. Let me start with the death of our father, Shimpundu Kapwepwe. The day he died, earlier in the day, he passed through my place, our place. By then, my husband had died in 1978, and Batata Baisafa 1980. In 1978, in 1972, they were all arrested by Kaunda and detained. Kaunda had also banned the UPP party. I think you remember that history.
Yes, we discussed
that is the time most of our people were arrested and detained by Johnny Chisata, by Justin Chimba, by Msonda Chambeshi, by Puta, by Robinson. A lot of them. My husband was detained in Impima prison. So when I see and I hear about the death of Mulenga Kapwepwe, I go back 40-something years ago. I was a very young woman then, and I had children. We were left alone as widows and orphans. Of course, you know what we went through. It was a big problem. But the day he died, he had traveled into Kitwe. He came through my house. He was checking on us, those whose husbands had died, the ones he was with in the party that he had formed. So he came, Mayo, how are you faring? I said, Tata, we are trying by God's grace. And he was telling Remy Chipidi, some people can remember him, and Abel Mulenga. Those were some of his lieutenants. He said, please continue looking after Abana Bandiaba. Then he traveled to, I lived in Chimwemwe after leaving our house in Ganeton. We came to live in Chimwemwe. That's where Batata passed through that day. Then he traveled to Kalulushi. Only to hear Batata had suffered a stroke, and the rest is history. And I had never seen many crying. He died in Chibuluma Mine Hospital. That's where our sister, Dr. Sampaka Kapwepwe, was working as a doctor. And we went there. Didn't we cry? We said, now, where are we going? We have nobody to look after us. Anyway, and those who were able, they traveled with the body to Chinsadi. I think that's where Mulenga is talking about when they went. The Reverend George Sangas of this world, you remember the story where he said, but one thing I learned from Mulenga Kapwepwe, of course, he was a firebrand. You can't compare him with anybody. That man was a firebrand. And for me, even up to today, I dreaded people who ill-treated him. William Banda, you remember he Lubama Market Padia. Who does that? And William Banda should be hearing this, that I still remember what he did to our father. So, Bakaunda went to Chililo. He was told not to say anything. He obliged and he sat. Now, here is a situation in Lungu. Where is the problem? Why can't HH learn from what Bakaunda did? For me, that day, the 18th of October, this is the day of prayer, fasting, reconciliation, and whatever, when he attended. I thought that was an opportunity where he would have turned things and people would have even said, so this is a new person. Because during those prayers, HH would have first and foremost acknowledged the man who declared 18th of October as a day of prayer, fasting, and reconciliation. Just to say, I want to thank my brother who did this. And at that time also, he would have apologized to the people of Zambia, saying, I am very sorry that I called this day as a useless day. If it was a useless day, why did he go to attend that day? And for that.
I think Yaptuka. Thank you very much. Mulenga, are you ready? Let me put you on the spot. You have so many questions. You can start with the issue of the Minister of Finance and scan through. Dear viewers, let's allow Mulenga Kapwepwe to answer to all your questions. Yeah, you are on.
Thank you. I hope you were writing some of those questions because there are quite a lot. I was jotting some things down. Okay, so can you hear me, Emmanuel?
Yes, you are on. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So to the Msokotwane response, I agree with the caller that I was also quite astounded. Let me say that there was a whole response that was crafted to answer me, who is just a simple, as we used to say in the army, a simple stupid citizen. I was basically just expressing what actually I had gone through in a sense. I was listening to the president very closely when he was speaking in Parliament, when he was speaking to the National Assembly. The president made the following statement in his parliamentary speech. He said, "Madam Speaker, the UPND New Dawn administration has made positive strides in enhancing fiscal prudence and addressing the debt crisis. Today," he said, "we are happy to report that over 92% of our external debt has been successfully structured." This fall, and it says the point 19 of his written speech. So actually, when I was listening, I thought, hey, we've restructured 92%. I was actually quite impressed. I was like, wow, okay. This means that we're nearly there. There's only 8% left. This is coming from the president, so I'm confident. And then, of course, a few days later, I read this Pricewaterhouse article where they're talking more about 44%, 45%. And I'm thinking, but the president said 92. How come this report is talking about 44? I think they were talking 44, 45. And so when I spoke about it on television, I was actually referring to the fact that I had listened to the president. I had even read the speech, and he said that we had successfully restructured the debt. Over 92% of the debt was successfully restructured. Then I see another figure, and I go to some of the World Bank reports, and it's the figure is still around 44, the lower 40s. So what is the president then saying? Is he lying to us? What is going on? And so that is the question I was asking, because now I concluded that no, actually the president was not being truthful with the Zambian people. And that is entirely what I said. When the response, the press conference, I listened with astonishment because because this is one individual. But let me also say that after that program on television, I was called by Pricewaterhouse. No, you misquoted us. I didn't. I said exactly what they said in their report. I was contacted by the economic advisor to the president, Pamela Nankamba. No, this is the whatever. She gave me a lot of information. She sent me a lot of information about where the debt restructuring is and all that. And, I said, well, that's very good. I was on doing, and I said, I watched you, job well done. When she made that statement, I said, job well done. Because for me, the bottom line was my statement had the response from the government to clarify the situation. Because I'm sure as many people as myself, along with myself, were puzzled the discrepancy in the figures. So when the Minister of Finance now actually put this press conference together, I was very shocked. But I listened to him as well, and I listened carefully. And the thing is, what what he has said in the statement, and there was a press statement and there was a whole press conference. He said that the truth that we must, as Zambians, believe is that 94% of Zambia's eligible debt has been restructured. But then he goes on to say an agreement in principle has been agreed with official creditors. And then there are MOUs that account for another. For me, I was thinking, but an agreement in principle is not a final. It's a work in progress. It's a stage. There's 8 stages in the debt restructuring process. This is just one of the initial stages. It's MOUs. MOUs are not binding documents. They're not legal documents. They're just agreements that this is what we're going to do, but they're not even legally binding. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, then he gives a figure of there's been new signings, now it's 57%. And I'm thinking, okay, that's new information. But all the information I got from the advisor to the president, the economic advisor to the president, didn't mention the 57%. So now I'm more puzzled. Did this 57% happen after I had spoken on television and by the time the press conference was held? Because the documents that I was sent from the economic advisor to the president didn't actually mention the 57%. So I don't know whether the economic advisor didn't get the latest information from the Minister of Finance. I don't know. But even that kind of struck me as, as you said in the beginning, I'm an author. So therefore, such details actually strike me. So for me, what I'm trying to say is I agree with the caller who was talking previously. The truth is that clearly the statement by the president was not truthful. I think he was making a political statement instead of an economic statement, and making a statement that left out a lot of detail. Yeah. If he had wanted, I think, for me, if he was aiming to be truthful with the Zambian people, I think what he could have said was that we have been in discussion in terms of our debt. We have discussed the restructuring of about 92%, but we have new signings for 57%, and the remaining, we have MOUs. He could have broken that down in just another sentence so that all of us were now clear that, actually, there's that figure, but then the actual things is that 57% are the ones that we've actually signed something on, and the rest is still up for discussion. So for me, the truth of the matter is that we are still, as far as the minister said yesterday, at 57%. We're not at 92%. So as far as I'm concerned, I think the president could have been more truthful in telling us exactly what this is. And it wouldn't have taken more than another sentence to explain to the Zambian people that 57% is this, 45% is this, this is where we are. Because that is being truthful with the people. And we have the right to hear the truth. And that is what I have an issue with.
Mulenga, you are right. Like Dr. Grief Chelwa stated, and like many reports are stating, and one of the reasons the IMF could not give Zambia, because Zambia is already looking for another debt, was that you have not resolved your debt issues, that you have not completed the debt restructure, and that you have not resolved your domestic debt at international level. Yes, you've signed MOU, like you've said, in understanding up to 92%, but the actual debt restructured stood at somewhere 46%. Unless there's something dramatic, they are now using a new figure, 57%. I think that's where the truth lies. So only 57% of our national debt, that's been outstanding, has been restructured. And I wish that they also could speak to the debt they are accumulating. Remember, they are condemning the PF. Every time anyone raises the issue of debt, say we are cleaning up what the PF left. Okay, if the PF left this debt, why are you accumulating debt at such a faster rate? The debt was $11.9 billion in 2011, in 2021, sorry. And now it's standing at $15.7 billion. The local debt was at 178 billion is now standing at 242 billion. Those are matters, 242 billion kwacha. Those are matters of serious concern. We have a debt you are resolving, but again, on the other hand, you're also accumulating debt at a very fast rate. So many people have agreed with you. You are not far off from the mark, even like Dr. Griff Chelwa stated. And even when you listen to Felix Nkulukusa, again, the information that we'll be spending about $1 billion in debt service defeats the whole purpose of debt servicing. Because people thought when you restructure your debt, you should be marginal in your debt service. It should be very marginal payment. But if $1 billion is going to be spent every year, what did you restructure? Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And the thing is, okay, so the other crazy thing, talking to what the caller said, that he responded to me. You know, Mohamed Lungu wrote a very good paper, and he was questioning the address of the president again to the National Assembly on the 13th of September in 4, where again the president talked about that the Zambia's GDP, Zambia had achieved an average real GDP growth of 5.3%, you know, over the previous years. And then there was a different figure again that came from Ministry of Finance around the same GDP. And Mohamed Lungu questioned, again, he also questioned, what was the president, where did the president get his figures from? Because they don't match the figures of the Ministry of Finance. So my point is there any coordination between the Ministry of Finance and the president and his office? Or what is going on? Is this deliberate or what? And you see, what, for me, I'm an author, as you said, and one of the things that struck me is because before that parliament, the National Assembly address, the president made it a point to show us a picture of himself saying he was writing the speech the whole night. He was burning the midnight oil, writing this speech that he was going to present to parliament, meaning he's the one who wrote it. Now, Emmanuel, you and I have worked in government, and you know that no president actually writes their own speech. So I don't know what that was about. But it gave him ownership in terms of what he said in the House. And so for me, I was questioning him because he had proclaimed to all of us that he was the author of that document, and he had written that figure. So, you know, my question and my position still stands that 92% is not truth. It is an exaggeration, and it could have been broken down very simply and explained to the Zambian people. Very, very simply. In another sentence, he could have cleared the air for all the Zambians to understand what is going on in the debt restructuring. And we do have a problem with the domestic debt, and we need to resolve that very quickly. I know that the bank governor had traveled to the States, and one of the issues was this local debt, the domestic debt. So I hope it's being addressed urgently, because that one has also ballooned out of proportion. So we need to, you know, address these things, and we need to, you know, I hope the figures start matching so that we actually address the problem as it is in reality.
Thank you very much. Your general view as we begin to close, there were a lot of questions for you about the history of, I think, Chinsali, the issue of, someone asked you about Lenshina and Mwamba, who you had just recited. What did Cha-Cha-Cha mean? What does it mean? And as a historian, reflect on that.
Yes, I think the first question was about Julia Chikamoneka.
Yes.
Julia Chikamoneka was actually, she was, I guess today we will call her a marketeer, because she actually had a stall in the market. And she became very involved in the liberation struggle, in the freedom struggle, and organizing. She was a very good organizer. And one of the things that we remember her for is that when MacLeod was coming, he had been said the British government to come and it was like a commission of inquiry to come and inquire about the state of Northern Rhodesia, whether it should still be a colony or whether, you know, those questions. And Julia Chikamoneka organized women to go to the airport, what is today the Zaf airport. Women marched there from everywhere in what do you call it in English? They were naked. Meaning they were just in their traditional underclothes, breasts bare, everything. And they marched to the airport semi-naked, and they had posters, and they were saying, Iwe McLeod, you must give us our independence. And when that British gentleman stepped out of the plane and saw these naked, for him, white people breasts are nakedness. To see these naked people, it really shifted his perspective to the point where he actually had tears in his eyes. And when he went back and gave a report to the British government, he was totally sympathetic with the Northern Rhodesian, the African cause, if you want, of the Northern Rhodesian struggle. And he actually got into a bit of trouble over there because they said, "Now you went, who softened you? You went and softened up because they were saying you should have, stood up and said, yeah, we are your, colonial masters." But the man completely changed, and he's actually became pro-independence for the native population. So Julia Chikamoneka, and she had a sense of humor because she found that whole story extremely humorous and very funny, and she always used to laugh about it. She's somebody that used to visit, but she found it very, very funny, and she used to laugh about it. That, I made that white man cry. But she was a militant, and she actually changed the course of history with her organizing the women. And the thing about also Julia Chikamoneka that we must understand, which I think is something that is missing today amongst us, is that once she was called Chikamoneka because she kept telling everybody, independence Chikamoneka, we will be free, Chikamoneka. That's how she got that nickname of Julia Chikamoneka. And when Chamoneke and we became independent, she said, fine, I did my job, I did my part, and she went back to her market store. She didn't ask for a reward, she didn't ask for a position, she didn't ask for anything. She says, no, we were working for the people. And I wish we still had that spirit of Julia Chikamoneka, where we do things for our country because we feel it is time to do that, or we feel it is our place to do it, and we do it without having to expect a reward or an award or whatever. That is, I think, something that I learned from Julia Chikamoneka's life. She did not want a reward. She got an award, of course, but she didn't want to be rewarded for what she had done, because she thought it was my duty to do it for the Zambian people. The next question, I think, was something to do with the impasse, the current impasse, in regard to the Lungu burial. Again, I think I can only repeat that it is a simple matter, I think, of simply just respecting what the family wants. There is no law that gives the government any right over President, former President, the late President Lungu's body. There is no law. And what we've been practicing has been precedence that, we bury our presidents in that place, which I can say for the record that when that idea was mooted and people were saying, no, we'll be burying them here, I told everybody, why? Why are you creating a space for burying presidents? Being a president is a job. Let them choose where they want to be buried, because your final resting place, I think, is a very important choice. And when someone dies and they specifically said they want to be buried somewhere where they have chosen, I think the last wish of someone should be respected. The last wishes of someone about their own burial should be respected. Those are the last wishes. So for me, I think it's a very simple matter. I don't know whether HH understands that if he actually resolves this and lets the family express their wishes and let those wishes be honored, I don't think he understands the kind of mileage he'll get out of people saying, oh, he has respected the wishes of the family. Because what he's acting on is precedence. And what is strange is that everybody has stayed in State House since 1935 when that State House was built. I think there's been 16 governors and how many, and all the presidents before him. have lived there. It's a precedence. There's no law. And he has said, I'm not staying there. He stayed out of State House. It was a precedence he has refused to observe. Again, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. One of the first things that happens when you when you are sworn in is the official portrait. There's two. One for the commander-in-chief in full uniform of the commander-in-chief of the Zambian army, and then the one in civilian. And he has, although it has been done since 1964, he has refused to have the portrait of him in uniform because for personal reasons. So for me, I don't understand why in this case, when it is simply precedence that he's acting on, that he can't also give that precedence and say, okay, this has just been precedence, then let's proceed and bury this man the way he wanted to be buried. So, one thing that I think he should understand is that, we don't understand, most of us don't understand economics, and we don't understand policy and things like that. But what Zambians understand, what almost every Zambian understands, is death, and what that means, and what the pain is, and what we do when someone dies. So for me, I would actually, somebody asked, would you advise HH? Would you be willing to? Yes, I would. I have had chance to sit with HH a number of times, and some of those times I have actually told him, I think, things that maybe other people won't say to him, but I did. There was one time I was sitting with him, and I said to him, this CDF thing that you have introduced, I don't think it will work. I think you need to go back to the drawing board, because the vehicle that you're using to deliver this is the wrong one. And when you use a wrong vehicle, you will not arrive at your destination. I understand the motive, I understand the vision behind this, but it's not going to happen unless you go back to the drawing board and some things are addressed. I have a very friendly relationship with HH. So for me, I can tell him what I want to tell him. And if I'd met him at some function, I'd have probably raised it with him. Why did you say 92? Why did you? Because we have a very cordial relationship, KK and myself, HH. So I can say what maybe other people fear to say. I don't know. I've told him before that,
Wonderful. Mulenga, to the other set of questions, let me just take 3, 4, 5 callers. They are so persistent.
Okay. Can I just answer the ones?
Yeah,
Emmanuel,
you come and answer all those.
let me
just
answer.
Take a quick call.
Some are very short answers.
Yes,
some
I know.
Are very short
I
answers.
know you answer. Yes. Just wait. I have 2 urgent callers, one from UK, one from Zambia. Let's start with the Zambian caller. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. And thank you for making so many calls. I feel so guilty. I see you called something like 20 times. I'm so grateful. Please talk.
Yes. Mama Mulenga, one thing I must appreciate you. First of all, I must say something that I must commend you. That born 1968, you still look as if you are sweet 16. You are born 1990 something.
She should tell us a secret. She should share the water she drinks.
She might share a secret that she still looks so beautiful despite that age. Now, one thing I wanted to say to you is that your father was a very strong man. He's a man who was very principled, and he never accepted anything that was up. I remember we used to call him the double prayer. Because of the Kapwepwe, double prayer.
Oh, double prayer. I see. Yeah.
He was very, very strong in some of those things that some people are even scared to say making him a president would definitely go into war, but that was just an
propaganda.
Illusion. The fact is that the man did not accept anything that was not right. Now, my saying that his blood was so strong. I don't understand why one of you, especially you, with such a good CV, cannot go into politics, and help. We had very few women that could stand up and talk like Nawakwi, Senga, and they are no longer there now. But we need people like you. If we have to achieve anything, you have got so much rich history, and your father's background was so good that I'm sure his blood is in one of you. I remember one of your sisters one time was a minister, but it was just a small little thing from Chiloba. You are mature enough to stand up for Zambia. Please, can you do that for Zambia and help and then actually take the mentor from your father?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me just take the quick calls. Thank you very much. We've got a caller here. Caller, please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Mwamba, for bringing my sister Mulenga Chilufya. This is Mulenga Chilufya. This is a very powerful program and presentation. My name is Chilufya Patrick. I'm based in the UK. And the reason why I called, there are a few things. First of all, I want to agree with you with the issue of the burial of Lungu. Mwamba and many other callers who are listening have talked about this. And I agree 100% with you. HH should have allowed the family to bury. And to me, this shows that, to HH, he thinks leadership is about control or power or authority. Leadership is not about control or power. It's about using that power vested in you by the people to empower other people. And also, leadership also comes with virtues, empathy, compassion, kindness. So when a leader is making decisions, he needs to consider those virtues, wisdom. And I think President West has missed it. And then I also agree with you, we haven't done the debt restructuring up to 92%. And I think the president 100% hasn't been truthful. I think it's a political game. But then this is a problem. Because in a democratic nation like Zambia, the hallmark of democracy is transparency and accountability. And where there is no accountability and transparency, there are problems. And that's when I'm now trying to come to the main issue. You talked about the history of Zambia, and history is very, very important. That we shouldn't be there, but history is very important because it's a point of reference. And you've mentioned very important thing. You and me, though I was young, I lived under Kaunda. It was brutal under the one-party state. There was no democracy. And Mulenga, for your own information, my family comes from Mundu village in Chinsali. And my grandfather was very close to your father and the Kaunda family. And my grandfather was one of the lieutenants in the Lenshina uprising. Kaunda knew him, and because some of our relatives were married into the Kaunda family in Chinsali. And when that uprising happened, my grandfather ran away into Congo. So he lived in exile in Congo for so many years. He only came back in 1980 or 81, and he was exiled. Because my father comes from, just like your father, my father comes from the royalty. They are royalty, And we have our own village. Mundu village was our village. Kaunda grabbed it from us. All our relatives were buried at Mundu village. But when my grandfather died, because he was an enemy of Kaunda, he was told to go and live in Lungu. He was told not to get closer to Chinsali because he was one of the lieutenants of Lenshina. And Kaunda was so brutal. And then for your own information, when your dad died, I met your dad with my dad. I was about 7-8 years when he was going to Kalulushi. and spoke to my father, because my father was a support. Since he was against Kaunda, because of what he did to his father, they lost a lot of wealth. He was supportive of Kapwepwe, and he's one of the people he met in Kitwe. And I met your father with my dad for the first time. And when he died, my father couldn't go there because he was scared, But one of the things my family did, because of intimidation from the Kaunda family, victimization, my father changed his surname. All my father's brothers and sisters, they changed their surname. Chilufya is my dad's middle name. My surname should be Mundu Musunka. If you ask if your mother was alive, he would tell you about my family. Even the Kaunda knew my father very well. But the point, Mulenga, I'm trying to drive is, history is very important. But Gen Z needs to learn the history, because the way our country is going, with HH insisting of the Bill 7, this country is sliding slowly to one-party state. We're already a de facto one-party state, because in a democracy, there's no way a president would lie about debt restructuring. And there's no way a president would hold a family to bury a person against their will. So, Bachilufia, I want you to advise. You lived in Kaunda. You saw how he treated your father, though you reconciled, which is a good thing. The way he treated my father, my family, he was brutal, because all the institutions were controlled by him. And this is where we're going. Parliament, the executive is under the president. Parliament is controlled. The judiciary is controlled. And he says he controls the army also. So should Bill 7 goes through, this is what is your advice to the Gen Z? They need to understand history. It's a point of reference. Imagine how brutal, because already people are saying HH is going to rule up to 2041. 2041. This one is so on TV live said it. What can you say about the Gen Z? Because we need to protect our democracy. Imagine going back to that stage where Simon Kapwepwe cannot even travel to the Copper Belt without being chased. The institution, the police going to his house and take the whole house. My grandfather changing his name to another. My father changing his name to another name just to be scared of Kaun, because they are scared of Kaun.
Thank you, Bachilufya. Thank you very much. We will need to have kept almost 2.5 hours. Please just allow the callers that I have lined up. Thank you very much, Bachilufya. And like many of you are saying, maybe she should come back. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Ambassador Mwamba, and good evening, Mama Mulenga Kapwepwe. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you today. Well, I only want to add up on what the previous caller from Kaputa, who emphasized so much on republishing some of the books that were written by our forefathers, who actually fought for our independence. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone knows that history plays a big role in our education, and there is no doubt about that. Yes, I was born in the 60s, and my parents would narrate real situation stories to us every now and then, and that was actually a part of preparing us for the future, where one would maybe probably learn from both the past and also the present. Yeah. So to conclude, I would maybe say that it would be better if maybe there are those who are in line with this, like Mama Kapwepwe and the others, to maybe set up some libraries countrywide where our children can read from these historical books.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
it would
Thank you. Thank you, Mama. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
Yeah, good evening, Ambassador.
You are our last caller for the day.
Okay. Last but not least, thank you so much for this opportunity and for Madame Kapwepwe. It's been a lesson, very emotional. Just before I actually started watching the show, I watched a video on YouTube, Madame Kapwepwe, and it was very emotional. And I think you've done very well, Mamba, to bring her on this show. And one of the reasons, the reason why, for me, I've been preaching for quite some time that Zambia deserves a second independence, the one we call 2.0, because everything is broken. And it's very heartening to see someone telling a story of how much the father had a better vision for our country and what they went through, through those negotiations. There's so much even our political parties can learn from, like what is Tonsi Alliance, that you can disagree with people and walk away. Like what she was telling us about certain things. When you disagree with things, so when you disagree with people in terms of the direction, you can walk away. And I think, for me, I think she's got you've got a big role to play. I can tell you this. With the next government, when we take this government out of power, you've got a big role to play to guide us, especially with our history and what Zambia always wanted to be. Because the vision of your father, and even when Kaunda, in as much as there were issues that were made there, but there's a dream that we always wanted as Zambia. What's our destiny?
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Let me allow Mulenga to answer all the cause, and we begin to make closing remarks. Mulenga, over to you.
Thank you very much. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. You are on.
Okay. So I was trying to go through the questions that I had kind of noted down. Okay, so the next question after the impasse, and just to go back a little bit on the impasse, I think when you're the president of a country, you have so much power. And one of the powers, I think one of the callers mentioned it, one of the powers is to exercise that compassion and kindness, yes, because as a president, the president is the chief comforter when something tragic happens in the country, because as a president, you have the power to stop the tears of the nation, of the weeping people in the nation. You have been given the power to stop the tears of the people, and it is within your power to do so. So I think that is what leadership is to create that condition where you can actually stop the tears of the nation. That was a former president, and people, obviously many people knew him, loved him, hated him, whatever. But you have the power to stop the tears of the nation and to direct that nation in how they will mourn that person. Saying that we want to bury him in honor and dignity, those things happen in a vacuum. You cannot be allowing people to insult that man who has passed away, who can no longer defend himself and his family, and then insist you want to bury him in dignity. Dignity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything must be dignified if you're going to bury that man in dignity. So for me, I think it is a simple matter. It's a matter of just saying, let's respect the wishes of the family. What do they want to do? And I can assure HH he will gain a lot of mileage just from being that kind and compassionate leader, that he will not lose anything at all if he actually gives in to the family. Nothing at all. He will gain much more than he thinks. In terms of the books, just to say that, yes, the books have been republished and they are available. Utunyongandimi, Shalapochani Chandala, Africa Twasevana, Chupunobu Yantanshi, all those ones have been republished again. Ubuntungamu Jambo Jambo, they are on the bookshelves, or I don't know whether you can put a number on the screen that people can contact. I don't know, but you can contact a guy called Mike on 0977 923133, and you'll be able to actually access those books wherever you are. So the books have been republished and they are actually available. In terms of somebody mentioned something about the fact that the local languages have been removed from the curriculum. And I concur with that caller, because it's very sad that we should actually disadvantage ourselves, because the reason why she was saying in the Western countries they're now actually adding languages into their curriculum is because science has discovered that a bilingual child, a child who is speaking more than one language, who's learning more than one language, actually has an advantage over a monolingual child, because the brain becomes wired differently when you have another language. The way the brain stores language and the way it processes actually helps the child to become, to become a better, more adept at problem solving and so forth. When we remove our own languages from the curriculum, we're actually saying we want to disadvantage ourselves. We not look at no language will become more popular. I think that's besides the point. In my family, my father said, we were the first minister's children. So when independence was gained, all the schools that had been white schools that were just for white children were now open to the local children, to the black children. And my father said, you are not going to go to these schools because they teach in English. You are going to go to a school where they teach in a local language, because I want you to learn a local language as well as English. But you must be able to write to me in a local language before I'll allow you to go to the Muzungu school and start learning in English. So the first time I was actually taught in English was in grade 5, because by grade 4, I could write in Chinyanja, and my father didn't mind that we were learning in Chinyanja. For him, the important thing was it must be a local language. So after grade 4, we wrote to our father, Atate, Manje, Taziba, Kamba Chinyanja or Tulemba Chinyanja. And that's when he allowed us to go to the convent school, grade 5. So grade 5 was the first time I was actually being instructed in English. But because of that, when you have your own native tongue, especially when you have it first, it is actually advantageous, because by term 3, we were actually in the top 5 of the class, although we'd never actually been instructed in English. But it was easy for us to pick up concepts and so forth, because we were able to think in 2 languages. So the country's policy must be bilingual, that we must develop a bilingual nation, because we will actually be putting an advantage on our own populations in terms of their own capacity to think, to learn problems, just by adding languages to the curriculum. So that's one thing. Somebody talked about my sister Chilufa Kapwepwe, and that she was part of the MMD, so maybe the healing wasn't what I've described it. Let me say that, yes, she was part of the MMD. And yes, my sister is a militant. And I think we all react in the same way when we see the political landscape becoming perhaps tough or unfair, or these injustices. So she joined the MMD because she felt that way. But let me also say that straight after the MMD lost, my sister went to see KK. She went to see him. So when you're talking about, maybe the reconciliation was, she, as part of the MMD still, they had just won. They had just put Kaunda out of power. But she had another, and she went to see him. And she went to see him and his wife. And they had a chat, and he was for that she had come to see him. So when I'm talking about reconciliation, yes, but it's too, and that's, I think, the important thing. In politics, and I hope that Zambia will take this lesson to the heart, especially the Zambian politicians, because my mother always said this when people came through our house, and many people came. In politics, treat each other well, because you don't know when you'll need each other. There was a very nice post on Causeway about Kaunda and Kamanga and whatever. First call me, I hadn't even seen the post, was the Kamanga. One of the, no, we've seen that post, it's terrible, And I want Zambians to understand that our far been bitballs in politics, but we, even as a cause is what we were taught, we still remain friends, and we are all friends. The first cabinet children are all friends up to now. Although, as you mentioned, Nalumino Mundia also broke away and formed his own party. We have our parents on different sides of the political spectrum. But what is important for everybody to understand is that Zambia is bigger than all of us. And I think that is what we were taught. And that is what we practice as children of those people who fought for independence, fell out, made up, fell out. We are still friends. And I hope that is what Zambia will always reflect. Despite our political differences, that we will always remain in harmony. That's very important. What advice are we giving HH? As I said, for me, every time I'm with HH, I can be very frank because we have a very cordial relationship. And if he wanted advice from me, I'd be very happy to give it. I told you I was a technical advisor to the EU. And one of the programs that I did was to send about 24 women to Ghana who were involved in arts and crafts those days. That was 2003 or something, long before Lungu became president or anything. But one of the people who went on that trip was Esther Lungu, because she was very involved in, she's actually very artistic. She was very involved in the arts and crafts sector. And it was the arts and crafts sector that was involved. And, women applied. They were selected by a team of people. And Esther Lungu was one of those. I know her. That's what I'm saying, that I do know. And so advice, it is something that I think is very possible, because I think we have to resolve the situation. Edith Mutale, I hear you, and I remember you, and thank you very much for your kind words. Also, I'm hearing a lot about the story and how to preserve it, and how do we make sure that the young people get to understand who fought for what did they fight for. I find it very discouraging that even only after 61 years, people have forgotten who Nalumino Mundia was, or Sipalo, or Elijah Mudenda, or we have to keep this alive. And I'm hoping that the curriculum and the authorship of books will also help us to go forward in this way. But we have to direct these things at young people, and a country that forgets its own history so quickly, I think, is headed for disaster, because we will repeat our mistakes. When someone, Nubachilufi, I think, was talking about, we cannot go back to what we went through under the one-party state, under Kaunda. That is very true. And if we haven't learned our lesson, we can find ourselves back there very quickly. So we need to teach the people. And when we also see that things are not going right and we might be sliding back towards that time, I think we should stand up and we should start talking about it. And I think that is why I think I am particularly talking about this, because I do have my own fears about where this country is going. I have my fears about, where is this country going? Because some of the things that I took for granted, and that I've also seen happen in the past, which were not very positive, I'm thinking, I do not want to see that again. I do not want to see what happened to my father, for example, being beaten in a public place, happen again. I do not want to see, I remember once standing in Cairo Road and seeing people burning the effigy of my father. I do not want to see that kind of hatred again. Well, so when I see the Kadarism and people being beaten, whatever, for me, it's very personal. And so someone is saying, oh, would you be running mate or whatever it is? Sometimes I think for myself, sometimes it's the people who choose the leader. Sometimes the leader doesn't even choose themselves, but the people say, you must lead, and that person becomes a leader. So when you're running mate, you're simply picked by people. So if somebody picks me, maybe. But it is certainly a time to rise. It is certainly a time to take interest. It is certainly a time to care that things go right for the Zambian people, because we only have this one country. A friend of mine was stationed in Afghanistan, and for the first time when she went there, she came back and she said, Mulenga, I did not know that a country can be so damaged that Ichalo Chilo Naika And she said, when I talk to people in Afghanistan, they don't even know how to recover, how to get back to what they were. It is very easy for a country to be destroyed. It is very hard to build it. And so we must guard against even the slightest step towards that destruction. And I think it is our duty, all of us, to step up and say, if something is going wrong or if something is not going right. When I start talking about a mendocracy, I'm not talking because a mendocracy is something that comes from that's one incident. It's because there's a pattern that I'm observing that some things are not right. Why are we being lied to? Why are lies being told to us? That's worrying. I think a caller said it then nullifies the whole concept of transparency, accountability, and so forth if you are not being told the truth. So I think that's, I think I've addressed all the questions, the first questions, at least. I think the last questions were mainly to kind of highlight and point out some things. So I think that is what I have to say. Hello, Emmanuel. Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. Mulenga, this has been a very inspiring program, and I'm glad that you've touched on issues of cadreism. You've touched on concerns that our people have about the direction of our country, and probably would call you once again. The callers are still coming. I'm so sorry. These are the only calls we can take. We've kept her for 3 hours and she's out of town, out of station. You forgive us, but she's given us all the meat, the history of our country and the future of our country. Just give us your closing remarks.
My closing remarks, I think, are to maybe the current situation and a plea for everyone to go and vote, to go and register as a voter. That is one way we can actually have a voice. And if there's anything that is not going right in terms of your voter registration where you are, please make sure that you can highlight it so people know and maybe address whatever it is that's going on, because that is the only way we can speak. And that is the only way we'll be able to determine our own destiny. So I'm just encouraging everybody, go and register to vote, because that is the power that we have ultimately. I ask you to do that. To the political parties, please unite. Please let us not waste the people's time, let's say. Let us unite, find a leader, let's go forward and go to the elections. The selflessness that I was talking about of Julia Chikamoneka, and even the selflessness, I think, of the people who created the MMD, I think should be what is guiding us today. Not everybody can be a president, and some of it we must acknowledge ourselves and step aside. So selflessness, who can serve best, who is in a position to really do the work. Let's consider those things as political actors and say, okay, I think let's sacrifice this one time and let one person lead, and let's go into this election strong and united. So that's one thing I think I'd say to the political parties, that let's sort ourselves out. Let's, the people of Zambia are waiting. I mean, everywhere you go, this is the worry of the people. Who are we going to vote for? So let us, I think, as people, find, for the political parties, find a leader. The people are ready and they know what they want. So let's go forward. They will state what they want, and we have to give them what they want. Ultimately, whether they choose UPND or whatever, but let us give them a choice that they can point at and choose and say, this is the way we want to go. I think those are my closing remarks. And I hope there'll be no press conference. There will be no press conference after this one.
There'll be another big one for you. There'll be another big one for you.
There'll be another press conference.
Mulenga, I would
Yes.
like to sincerely thank you for gracing, the program. I don't know where my camera has gone. Thank you so much for spending so much time. I'm glad that you, even when you were out of town, you said this broadcast must happen. And thank you very much. To our dear viewers, our callers, everyone who participated, thank you for as you can hear the calls in the background, the people still want to talk
They're
to you.
still ringing.
I guess you owe me
Emmanuel,
a second.
just one last thing, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, one last answer. And somebody asked, how do you manage to say so young? I think the secret is I'm a vegetarian, and I've been a vegetarian for over 20 years now. So maybe that helps.
Oh, you're a vegetarian?
Yes, I don't drink alcohol. I'm a vegetarian, and I take my exercising very seriously.
Oh,
so maybe
thank
that
you
helps.
very much.
I don't know.
That's a good insight. People can learn. Even Dr. Kaunda would say being a vegetarian helped him live longer. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, enjoy your tour of duty, and when you're at base, let's discuss. You might owe us a second broadcast.
Anytime, Emmanuel.
God bless
Anytime.
you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Let me play your father's videos. Thank you.
Bwana tabanangu chimwe chebo ichingatia pa kukumbatana pa bwananyi tuyinamika sinso tulese patunono tuli abantu.
He was born on the 12th of April 1922 and died on the 26th of January 1980. Did you know he spoke fluent English, Bemba, Lozi, Namwanga, and Swahili? Did you know he served in the Northern Rhodesian government as Minister for Native Agriculture? Did you know he delivered the first speech by Zambia after her admittance into the United Nations? Did you know he influenced the change of dress code for Parliament to include traditional attire when he refused to wear a Western-style suit as per requirement? Did you know he represented Zambia at the state funeral service for Sir Winston Churchill, former British Prime Minister? Did you know as Vice President he also held the additional portfolio of Minister of Finance? Did you know that while in opposition, he won a parliamentary seat in Mufulira without campaigning, as he was barred from doing so? Did you know that he authored 6 books, played the guitar, was an avid tennis player, and studied in India? This April 2022, Simon Kapwepwe would have turned 100 years old. The Kapwepwe family wishes to announce the centenary birthday celebration of the late Mr. Simon.